years, which is a miracle to me. I never thought I'd ever be here, or last 20 years. But I belong to that generation that right now is getting squeezed from both sides. When I took my first tenure track job in 1990, it was at Valdosta State University, which is a big regional university in South Georgia, very bottom of Georgia. It's one of those places in Georgia that is not near Atlanta. If you have students, you know how many of them live near Atlanta, but Valdosta is not near Atlanta. When I arrived there in 1990, as a young assistant professor, the call went out that they needed a new director for the study skills center, the writing center. That was housed in the English department. Right? Nobody jumped up to take that job because the guy who had it was ready to leave. But the kicker was whoever took the job would get the computer in the department, right? The big old PC. And I thought, wow, nobody else is going to do this. I want a computer. I can figure out how to run a writing center, I guess, but I want the computer. Now, a little background to that. When I finished my dissertation, when I finished my master's thesis at Vanderbilt in the early 80s, I paid somebody to type it and retype it because that was what you did. It had to be typed. And I didn't type that fast, so it was worth the $1 paid to get done. That's the old world. I finished my dissertation on a Mac 512K. Right? So I'm in the last generation of typing theses, and I'm in the first generation of producing, of word processing a dissertation. So I'm right on that cusp. That's sort of good news, except for the fact that I was never taught by a professor who used a computer. I never took an online class in my life. They didn't exist. As a teacher, moving forward from the 90s into the 2000s, into the 20-teens, as technology has taken over, people in my generation face this awkward situation. You know, most of you, if you're not in education, you know that the one course you never take to prepare to teach at the university level is an education course. The way you learn to teach in most disciplines is you aren't. You're expected to remember how you were taught and to do likewise or better. For my generation, in a technologically enhanced world, nobody ever taught me. I never took an online course. That's not part of my experience. I've got to not only learn the technology, I've got to figure out whether or not, and if so, how it might be useful in my particular discipline, in my particular institution for these particular courses. So that's kind of the squeeze I feel pedagogically. We talk about the generation who are caught between their parents and their children, you know, having to raise them both. That's kind of the way I feel in education. My generation is stuck between having to do things in ways we never did them and to teach students how to do them that way. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Now, having said that, the old world was a lot simpler, but the new world is the new world. And it doesn't matter whether you like technology or not. I think if you want to have a career in higher education, you don't have a choice. If you want to be considered competent as a teacher, you've got to learn how to use technology to its best advantage in your courses. You just have to. Now, having said that, machines are machines and classrooms are classrooms. Right? Each offers very different advantages and disadvantages. But there are some advantages, some necessary evils, so to speak, but certainly also some advantages to technology. And I think Canvas is one of those useful tools that can be useful if you figure out how to use it in the best way. And for me, today, it's about how do you organize a class online. Okay, let me stop there. All right. So if you remember, if you were here last year we were in a Blackboard world. We had been for years. That was what we used. Everything was organized around Blackboard. And on the May the 4th or 5th, whatever it was, people graduated. And that Monday, for those of us who taught summer courses, we were instantly in a Canvas world. So that weekend was the transition weekend. I was teaching a summer course, and so I had to learn Canvas on the fly, so to speak. That month of practice here was helpful, but certainly not enough. I mean, we just didn't have, that's just the way things worked out. What I chose to do, and I think it was a good choice, although I made it completely by accident, was to organize the course I taught in May, for the summer term. It's a 10-week course. I organized it by using the module tool. Now let me explain that course because it's important to know something about that course. It's a survey of World Lit 2. It's a Gen Ed course. Every student's got to take it no matter what the major is. It fulfills the Gen Ed credit. Typically, it's full of students who are non-majors. In the summer, it's full of course students who are almost always adult students, or transient students, or transfer students, non-majors. It's entirely online. I never see those students ever. I don't know those students beforehand. I will not know them afterwards. They're not part of my program. And so there are all sorts of problems for me as a person who likes dealing with my students one-on-one in my course. It's just impossible. I have to use technology to make the course work. Another problem, another complication in a course like this, as you all know, is you have to deliver the same content in a much tighter time frame. I refuse to teach this course in the 4-week terms because there are not enough hours in the day for them to read the material. So I settle for the 10-week term. But that's still 15 weeks of material, most of it reading, squeezed into 10 weeks, which is like a 30% concentration. John, I don't know what the right word is. And the problem in the summer courses, and this one in particular, is if a student gets behind, there's no week off. There's no summer break. 4th of July holiday is not a holiday. You can't get behind. It's also a problem because those students in that class are often, almost all of them were adult study students in that program before the online university kicked in, which meant they frequently had 1 or 2 or 3 jobs, 1 or 2 or 3 children, 1 or 2 or 3 exes, and it's summer. And the kids are at home and not in school. All of those things meant that they didn't have nearly as much time as they thought they had. So I needed to find a way to make sure they knew what to do, even though we weren't in real time, so that I didn't have to sit at my computer 18 hours a day waiting for them to ask me a question. And then for those who were, because they were managing their own time, they could tell week to week what they had to do and get it done, so that they didn't accidentally fall a week behind or 2. And for the few high achievers who wanted to work ahead because they were going to go on vacation for a couple of days, I needed to make it possible for them to see a week ahead and work ahead if they wanted to. So I organized this course using the modules. This is my homepage for the course, and then help me fix buttons so that they can click to see the text, they can click to see the course description, they can click to see the reading schedule, they can click to start the course. To me, this was what made me think, I think modules are going to work. Let's see if I can remember how I did this. So on this button, on this click to start the course button. Yeah. They click start the course, this is what they see. They see this page inside that let's get started module. Tells them, hey, this is a short week, this is the first week, this is what we're going to do this week, right? And when they finish that page in modules, it's linked to the next page in the module. So now that they know when the course is started, this is page 1, how to read for this course. Most of them, remember, aren't English majors. They don't like to read. They're accounting majors, computer science. They put it off. And so I like to tell them how to do it. I have a handout that I usually give out when I teach face-to-face. What I did here was I built a page with a little bit of an explanation. Then I uploaded that handout from my computer. so that they can, and fix it so that it opens automatically in this window. They can read it right here if they want to. If they'd rather read hard copy, they can click and download it and print it out themselves. When they finish that little introduction, give them my big summer advice. Don't get behind her, you're going to die. But full much. Summer's attentive. The time management is absolutely essential. This is how much time you're going to have to spend on this course to do the reading and get the assignments done. Plan ahead. I've organized it this way. Deadlines are always going to be 11:59 p.m. on Thursdays. And this is how the modules are built. On Fridays, this is what you should do. Visit the module, review the items, make a plan, start reading. Saturday, read. Does that make sense? Again, that's just a suggestion. Do it however you want, but this is my advice. Now, the other thing about modules is, when you build a module, and that's the way I built this module, is they have to go through item by item in order to finish the module. They can't just skip down to the submission and be done. They have to at least open that page before they can move to the next page. That let me make sure that I sort of gently but directly move them into the course and through the material I would have presented to them in order so that they could literally start the course. I forget what happens next. Oh, yeah, that's the next obvious thing. Get the textbook. And what I did was, I built this out as an assignment. Oh, I've got something to do this week. When you get your books, click submit. I'm looking at the wrong view. It opens the text box. I built it as a text submission assignment. Just click on the box and tell me that you did it. I got the books. And then click submit. Why did I do that? A, I wanted them to know they had to get the book. B, that assignment introduces them to how Canvas works. Because a lot of the assignments are text box assignments. Right? If they don't do this one, and it doesn't show up, I know who's not reading, or I know who doesn't know how to manage Canvas, and I can have a really focused, come to Jesus conversation at that moment. Does that make sense? And they're not here until they've already read why I wanted to buy those textbooks. Let's see what happens next. I built another assignment to introduce them to the discussion tool and also to solve that problem of online classes, which is I don't know who you are and you don't know who I am. How are we going to pretend we know each other? This also teaches them how to use the discussion tool, which was another thing I was going to use in the course. So they bought the books. Now they can talk, but they have to buy the books before they can do this.
So that,
yeah.
Obviously, on the page it says you have to buy the book.
Yeah.
But if they haven't submitted anything, then they can't skip to this page.
That's right.
So until they've completed assignment 1, they can't get to this page.
Yeah. Now, that's a downside of using that. Now, you don't have to build out the modules linked that way. You can just have 5 assignments and they can do them in whatever order they want to. But for this particular unit, I decided I wanted to link them because I wanted to make sure I lockstep marched them through the most important information in the course. And if they got stuck anywhere on that line, I wanted to know about it right then. I wanted them to say, hey, I can't move on to step number 3. Why not? Did you do step number 1 and 2? Well, no. Okay, go back, do step number 1 and 2. Or, yeah, I did 1 and 2, but it won't let me in. Now I know who to call because there's a Canvas problem. Does that make sense? And in a course like this, where their ability to access me by technologically is absolutely necessary. The first thing I want to know is if there's a glitch in the technology, because we don't have time to wait a week. So that's why I decided to link these in that module step by step by step so they could move forward. However, if you do every module that way, you've got to be aware that there may be good reasons for students to need to do something out of order. The upside of technology like Canvas is its ability to scale up and serve vast numbers of students with little effort, and to deliver the same exact information to a whole bunch of people without ever touching a photocopier or a mimeograph machine, if you remember that. The downside, however, is making individual exceptions, or realizing, whoops, I made a mistake. If you make a mistake, it also multiplies the mistakes by a factor of 10,000. And the time it takes to solve those problems is also exponentially greater. So it takes a lot of thinking ahead of time if you want to make it work right. Now, this summer, through no fault of anybody's own, I had to learn on the fly how to do it. That first weekend, I was able to get this module and the next module built out and ready to go. And I could publish those two so that students could start. So for the rest of the term, I tried to stay 2 modules ahead so that they had work to do while I figured out what they were going to do next. And I could publish those and so that students who wanted to get ahead or wanted to plan a schedule could see what's coming up next week. But it was a busy summer. I mean, I spent 4 or 5 hours every day trying to build a course while they spent 2 or 3 hours every day trying to do the course. And I made some mistakes. That's just on the fly. And the downside with technology is it takes more time to solve problems. If you know how to do something right, it's easy to do it right a lot of times. But if you don't do it right, you've done it wrong a lot of times. And it's a little more complicated. Yeah.
How did you introduce yourself?
Remember that Let's Introduce Ourselves page? I did the first entry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I told them what I wanted you to talk about.
And then got it. So you're very much still in the showing them how Canvas works, how the assignment works. Got it.
Yeah, and that was an easy way for me to show them, this is what I want you to talk about. Here's me answering the questions I asked you. Yeah. And one of the things I had them do is I said, submit an image, because that was also going to be part of the course. I said, instead of giving me a selfie, I don't want to see any more selfies in my life. I said, send me a picture of something else that represents who you are in some way, shape, or form. Now, remember, this is a lit course.
Right.
One of the things I teach in this course is what the notion of symbol means, right? And so, without them knowing it, I was having them give me a symbol of who they are, which let me then say, all you guys already know what symbol is. Why did you send me that picture, so-and-so? Well, because I love horses. There you go. That's picture's a symbol of who you are. So that was an easy way for me to, A, figure out how it worked, because I had to do the assignment too. But B, to model for them what I wanted them to do. And solve that problem of how do they get to know me as something other than the screen they look at every couple of nights. Okay, let me stop there for questions or comments. Has anybody experimented with modules in here? I think for some courses, especially courses that depend on building a set of skills or mastering information in layers. In other words, if you don't know this, there's no point in moving on. I think modules might be a really great way to design that course out, because it makes it really easy to see who's not moving through the course and exactly where they got stuck. It makes it easy for you to see. It makes it easy for the student to see. And I think that would be a great reason to consider using modules. The downside is changing horses in the middle of a string.
Could you click on your modules tab to show them the organization? Because that was one thing that I really liked that I saw earlier, was because you use some text to kind of divide up certain sections.
Yeah. So here's what can you do that? Yeah. So I named my modules, because it's a summer course, by weeks, so that I could refer to week 1, week 2. But I also realized I got to put the dates in there, because they won't know. And then that's just a title, right? And then I loaded each module with the stuff I wanted to put in there. See, here's my first module, had the overview of what the first week going to be like. This is what you got to read first. And I used the indentation tool sort of to to visually organize it for them and for me. And then you can see down here, I also put in some assignments to get the textbooks. The let's introduce ourselves was the discussion. The first journal assignment, I also wanted to experiment with the journal tool. And so I put one of those in the first week. And then there's my signature symbol assignment. That was my picture. Actually, it's a better picture than that. I don't know what it was, but it was
To help the appetite, man.
Oh, yeah, it's it is lunchtime. But I want to go back and show you one more item I added to the modules. And if you're teaching online, I think this is a really smart thing to do. I had this thing called Any Questions. I titled it Raise Your Hand. So that virtually, if a student had a question in the course, they could click there. It takes them to the a version of the discussion tool, and they could ask their question. Here's an example of one that the student sent in right there. Can't make it any bigger. She asked, for the graphic overview assignment, do we do one for each chapter or just one big one for the week? Right? I'm thinking, that's a great question. It's a question every student might have. I can answer it here, and every student not only sees her question, which they may not have thought of, they can also see my answer. They don't have to now email me. And remember, if the notifications are set right, they know. Somebody's put something on the raise your hand board. Oh, and Dr. Hearn has answered it. I should go look. So I think that's useful. Now, in this particular course, let's see, over the course of the term, I just used one board for all the questions. That's all the questions I got. One at the beginning of the course, same student. One at the end of the course. So, it's summer. Summer's different. I don't, anyway. It's an extra paycheck.
You talked about you linked these modules so that they had to go in a linear fashion through them.
The first module I linked so that they had to go through that module in that fashion.
When you do that, can you prevent them from going on until you've graded something? Or they just have to get to the end, submit something, go on?
I don't know.
I'm imagining if I had a whole set of labs online that they could do on the computer, could they race through them all before I graded the first one?
Good. I mean, you can, in Canvas, you can set windows for when assignments appear and disappear, when they can be accessed or not. So that's a way you could control that. Another way you could control it is, if you know how long it's going to take you to grade them, you can set the opening for this set of questions for a date that will be well after you've graded it. Knowing when I'm going to grade something is a problem.
Amen.
I'm not always sure.
Yeah.
But that's a way, that would be another way to do it. Now, my default answer to every question you ask me is, but you should ask Hope. Well, for me, that's pretty darn easy. Yeah. So have that conversation. Yeah. So there are ways to do that. So this was that discussion tool. Let's see what else happened. Okay, so what happens when they go to the next one? Yeah, so that one just took them straight to the next module. At the end of week one, they just went right into the next module. And I built the modules out. Remember, this is that summer course where I don't ever see them. I could use the modules to structure every week sort of the same way. And then when they opened the module, they got the overview for the week to let them know what was going to come up before they got to the next thing. And you can link, you can say you have to read this first before you can read anything else. You can also link it so you have to read this before you can read that. You have to read this before you read that. You can make it super tight. But this way worked for me. And I think in that environment of teaching entirely online, not in real time, doing this modularly was a really good solution for me and my students. As badly as I managed it, it was a good way for that particular teaching situation. In my real life, face-to-face in front of classes, I'm less comfortable using modules. Primarily because in the courses for which Canvas is most appropriate, my general education classes, those courses are also, in my world, the least predictable. A course like this one, Survey of World at 1, That course is typically full of non-majors, right? Most of whom I've never had before, most of whom, unless I'm really good, I'll never have again, who don't know exactly how to do this course. They're freshmen, they're seniors in some ratio. Some years I've got all senior nursing and accounting majors, because they put it off till the very end. Some years I've all got freshmen and sophomores and juniors, because for some reason they're taking it early. And those two different populations have, teaching them is different. Which means from semester to semester, I can't predict which way that class is going to go. I like teaching that class because there's no next class those students have to take. Right? I don't have to get Calc 1. If you don't get this far, you're going to fail Calc 2 and it'll be my fault. It's not one of those courses. For most students, it's an appreciation course. My job is to teach you something about literature, and hopefully convince you that maybe you'll read a book on your own one time. But the trick in there for me is that how do I make it interesting? Depending on that particular batch of students, their chemistry, their preparation, their interests, we can go a whole lot of different directions. It's also difficult to predict how fast that group will catch on and what they want to or can discuss, how much time they need to process. Doing a modular, kind of a rigid modular system for that course doesn't work for me. I always give my schedule in that class as a tentative schedule. I say Dr. Hearn's reading schedules are always tentative because they always get adjusted. Adjusting in a modular course for me is much more complicated. Adjusting in a page-oriented course is a lot simpler. Let me show you a page. Poetry. Let's not do that. Okay, so my home page looks the same, but what happens is I've organized this one. I'm going to go to my assignments page because I use pages and organize them in the assignment button according to the categories, according to the assignment type categories. Does that make sense? So students wouldn't go here. When a student goes to the home page, it will tell them a new assignment has been posted, click here. It'll take them straight to an individual assignment. They won't see this page. They'll just see that assignment. They can do it and submit it, it goes away. However, for me, I can see my course. I can see what I've built out. I can see when my deadlines are set. And also by using the assignment grouping tool, anybody experimented with that yet? That's huge, especially when it comes to weighting different components. It's so useful. It lets me do things in this course, like I can create a category called sonnet exercises. Now, I know that I'm probably going to have, I plan to have about 10 or 12 of those. Obviously, I haven't built them all out yet, but that's my plan. By having this category, whenever I come up with a new one, I can just dump it in there at the same time that I send it to my students. And whether I have 10 or 12 or 8 or 7 or 4 at the end of the term, I don't have to recalculate how I've weighted those individual assignments. I don't have to know on the front end exactly how many I'm going to have or what they're going to be. I can just build that category, and as I build a page, I can stick it in the right category. And Canvas will do all the math. Canvas, you can even set it up so that in this category, I want to drop their lowest grade, or I want to drop their 2 lowest grades, or I want to drop their highest grade, or in one exercise, it's up here, the language skills, I have a set of quizzes that I built. I'm really proud of that. I hate technology sometimes, but I'm proud of that. And I built it so that they have to take 5 quizzes that will be graded. Well, let me do this one. I built a practice quiz. They can take that 100,000 times if they want to and see their score, and it won't matter because I'm not counting the grade. But there's a window in time when they have to take 5 quizzes that count for real. 10 questions, 1 minute, vocabulary kind of a thing. They got to take it 5 times. I'm going to drop their 2 lowest, and I'm going to drop their 1 highest. They're going to hate me. But my point is, I want to know how good you really are. I don't want to know how lucky you got. And I don't want you to feel lucky when it comes to knowing how to read Shakespeare's language. I want you to know that this is what you know. And a fair number is what your average is on your average days. So that just illustrates how dangerous Canvas is. Because it took me all weekend to figure it out. They haven't done it yet, so it could be a terrible mistake. But the point of that is you can go ahead and build a category without knowing exactly how the course is going to go or how many assignments you're going to have. The trick is, if you're going to weight it, then everything you dump in there needs to be graded the same way on the same scale, or the math won't work out. So Canvas can work all that out. It can drop lowest scores. It can drop highest scores. It can drop X lowest and X highest. It can average. It can even curve. I never mess with that. But, so this is a course organized by pages. To me, the advantage of a pages course, I much prefer that for a face-to-face course where I'm going to have to adjust on the fly, because it's so much easier for me to have a basic plan for how I think things want to go without having to know assignment by assignment exactly what they're going to do when and how and where it's going to fit. The downside of pages is you can't. What's the downside of pages? Oh, the downside of pages is it's a lot harder to sequence the way students move through it. You've got to play with deadlines and dates and windows, and that's more complicated. If it's important for your students to do these assignments in this order, or they can't move on, you can even build it where they have to have a certain score on the assignment before they can move on. Then I think modules might be a thing to think about. You can't do that nearly as easily in pages. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there for questions. Questions at this point? Have any of you experimented with the attendance tool yet? Yeah. That changed my mind about attendance. I'm not a naturally well-organized person. I organize, but I organize by files, not by color and length. And manufacturer. And attendance was always a problem for me. I think attendance is important. If you're not there, you're not there. You can't contribute. And I'm not going to teach you again because I showed up for my appointment and you didn't. It matters. But this is what happens to me. If I get to class all ready to take assignments, right? I've got my paper notebook out, ready to check off who's there. All of us know you can't take attendance at 9:59 for a 10 o'clock class. And you probably shouldn't take it at 10:01. You can, but what happens is the class becomes about attendance, and every time somebody shows up late, and they will, you stop, you got to make the mark, right? What happens to me as a person is that even if I'm ready to take attendance, if any student asks me a question that catches my interest, I forget attendance. I launch. And then class is over, and I see my attendance book, and I'm thinking, so who was here? Was that yesterday they missed? Or did they come in late? Right? You know, I'm just not organized that way. The attendance tool, to me, solves a lot of those issues. Let me go back and show you. I think it's cool. Oh, let me show you a different course. Let me show you a course from last semester.
While you're pulling that up, Matt, one of the things that I was talking about this earlier in the first session. I've not played with pages. I've set up modules. I'm very linear, and so I like that. But with pages, you can put more images. You can put your files in there, so then you can hide that tab that says all the files for students to access. So you know, it's really another great way to organize it. And so at the end, after Matt shares the attendance and any other questions, the all courses that we're building out in Canvas from the CTL that you guys have access to, a couple of those have pages built out, and then a couple of them I know at least one has modules built out. I just threw up the spring 2019 resources and just put in modules, but we're, learning and seeing models from other people. So a lot of times I'll just Google like Canvas pages and see what other people have posted that are out there and be able to bring that into my own class as well.
Yeah, and for most of us who've never worked with Canvas, exploring the pages that Hope and Al set up can let you see what it feels like. And that's a great sort of cheat.
Yeah.
As far as the attendance goes, they call it roll call. This is already built in your course whether you know it or not. If you click on attendance, it's already populated with every student who's there. It's ready to go. This is a day that the class doesn't or didn't need, but every day is in there. Now what you can do, here's the easy one. So what I do now is I go home, everybody was there, except 2 kids. What I'll do is I'll come up here, click mark all present, except I know that Hannah wasn't there. I'm done. There you go. Now, here's another really cool thing. I know Hannah is let's pretend she's an NCAA athlete, and so she's going to miss 12 classes because she's on the softball team. We live in an institution where certain absences are now called approved absences. You can't penalize a student if they miss that class for that thing. How do I keep track of that? There's a thing called badges, and ordinarily anything that says badge, I'm not interested in. But I realized, this might be actually a useful tool. So what you can do here is you can go add a badge. You can make a label, in other words. The badge I built is called approved absence, but you can give it a title. You can pick an icon. I used a thumbs up. Oh, that's okay. You can pick a color for it, and then you save it, and then you've got this sort of little built into that course a set of badges. If I think, she missed class, but it's because she was playing in the tournament, I can click on approved absence. So even though I can track, you weren't in class, red X, I know that this is one of those absences. Now, watch what happens. If I don't approve the absence, she's absent one time. Well, I don't understand, but this is what happens. This is an old course, and I think it won't let you change it. It'll tell me how many times she's been absent. If I've used the badge for any of them, it will tell me how many of them were approved. Even I can do the math to see how many were real absences as opposed to approved absences. I find that useful in helping students understand why attendance is important, especially if they're going to miss a lot of classes. I also find it really useful in having conversations with coaches or administrators when a student misses 12 classes because the ball team that they're on did really well and now they're in the tournament. Now, how are they going to make up the 6 weeks of classes they didn't? I think this gives us as faculty a tool, a very useful tool. When we have those discussions with our administration about what the cost of athletics, the cost of approved absences, the cost of those study groups that start before spring break and don't come back till after spring break. It helps us quantify those kind of things and keep track of it. Now, here's the best thing about it, I think, for me. I can keep track of it this way, or I can organize what I see as a seating chart. When you start the seating chart, what you'll see is all your students' names over here, and the grid on that side, you just click and drag and drop. I teach in EZEL. It's got those generic kind of classrooms, tables that roll, and they're usually organized where there's kind of a space in the middle and then rows of tables. Here's my space in the middle, and here's my rows of tables. Students are creatures of habit. I didn't even have to give them a seating chart. This is where they always sat, right? More or less. She was always all by herself on the back row. Mm-hmm. These 3 guys always sat together. These 3 young women always sat together. They would move this way, but never this way. So I can really easily drag and drop me a chart. And instead of, I can click on this instead of that list. I can click on Jacob and he'll be absent. Or let's say I thought Hannah was absent, but actually she just came in late. If You click twice, it gives you that little orange clock just past the hour. And it automatically calculates that by default as an 80% present. So if I go back and look at her particular attendance, let's see, you go back to list and click on Hannah. There's more here. Notice she's got an approved absence, so that doesn't count against her. Otherwise, she'd have 100% present. But because she was tardy one time, she's lost a few points for being tardy. There's a simple button you can click if you would like attendance to count as part of the grade for your course. This grades it for you, and you can set whatever penalty you want for tardiness or not. They can see their score, and you can click a button that says don't count this towards their final average. Right? And you may prefer to do that. You can weight attendance, just like any other assignment group, as much or as little as you like, from 0 to 100%. Actually, probably 110%. Because in the weighting assignments category, that's a whole other topic. You can weight your assignment categories at more than 100%. You know how in Blackboard, when you got to 100, it stopped, and you couldn't. The trouble with Canvas is you can have a course that has 110% worth of points, 120. Now, I'm thinking that might be useful if extra credit is a thing that you do in your course. That may be a reason. I haven't figured it out yet, so I'm not going to talk about that. So I just wanted to throw in attendance as a way of organizing a different part of the course that's always been a problem for me. And this is a really fast solution. This is a technological solution to taking attendance that I grudgingly have to admit, this is a really useful electronic tool for what happens in my classroom. So, okay, I'm going to stop there. We've got about, 15 minutes left before 1 o'clock. 12 minutes, actually. If you have questions or comments, or if you have solutions to any of the problems I'd like to hear, especially from those of you who use modules, why you like them or things that you can do with them. If you have discovered things you can do. Okay, go ahead.
So, I'm just trying to summarize in my head. You're saying if you're teaching completely online, modules might be better if you're teaching in class, and this is an 8, then you'd be more likely to do stages. Is that correct?
I think I would say this way. If you're teaching entirely online, I think modules is probably a good way to do it, especially on our intensive courses where you're not talking to students in real time, but the clock is ticking and they have deadlines. A lot of my students in the summers somehow got the notion that I have all summer to do all the work. It's like a correspondence course. And I'm not gonna grade all your work in August. And so I think using modules in that teaching situation is better for the students because it keeps them accountable earlier and more regularly. So I would say the decision is not simply whether you're teaching online or not. It's what kind of an online situation are you in? And the same thing would be true about your face-to-face situation. What kind of a class is it about? What's most important? What's the most efficient way for you to keep your students doing what you want them to do when you want them to do it? And which of those methods is more efficient for you, given your time constraints? What do you have time to do? And if you're the kind of person who teaches a course where you're very likely going to adjust things or might have to adjust things on the fly, then Pages is a simpler way of making adjustments more quickly and efficiently than if you've got all these linked modules and you realize one of them's off, then you've got to go back and it can be more complicated. But it's not so much whether you're online or not, it's what kind of a class you're teaching. Now, the online courses I teach are always intensive, and they're always students I don't know and will never see. And so, to me, that's a specific kind of a teaching situation where I need to find a way to make sure they do what I want them to do when I want them to do it on schedule. Whereas in a face-to-face class where I have 15 weeks, I like having the freedom to adjust. I like having a cache called homework, so that whenever I decide I want to give a homework assignment, I can just throw it in there. And whether I do 7 of them or 8 of them or 12 of them or 15 of them, I don't really care. And with homeworks, in that category, remember, I can always say drop the 3 lowest grades. So when a student says, oh, I didn't do the homework last week, can I bring it to you Monday and will you grade it? I can say, don't worry, I'm dropping you 3 lowest grades. I don't have to remember which one I dropped. Canvas will remember because there's a 0. Canvas also automatically drops in ways that work to the student's best advantage. So if you're like me, you don't have to do differential math. It automatically does what's best for the student given the rules that you set. So that's another thing. That's another way to think about organizing.
Yeah, and I think with pages, like being able to adapt and change your text size and, you know, the images that you put in there versus modules, you can't change, you know, the formatting. It's, you know, this, and this. So, you know, depending on what you want facing the students as well also comes to play.
Maybe the question of structure. If you want a highly structured course, modules are the way to go, I think.
Yeah.
But they're
It's a
less
little more
adaptable
fluid.
if you have to change. Whereas pages aren't as naturally structured, but they're highly adaptable if you decide you change your mind.
Yeah. And you can look, like I said, look at examples that we've built out in Canvas. If you go to courses, and then, because we've decided to put everything in Canvas instead of My Lipscomb, because that way you guys can have it when you're in Canvas. And then go to all courses at the bottom, and then you can go to browse more courses, and I'll have the institutional core things that we've built out for you guys, and to also share with adjuncts as well.
And my last piece of advice is whenever you have a question about Canvas, just come downstairs.
Yeah.
Right? The best thing I think that's happened with regard to teaching at Lipscomb since I've been here is the development of the CTL. It's kind of a grassroots thing. And this is the one place on campus where they actually do care about you teaching well, and they get paid to help you do it well, regardless of your class size, regardless of whether you're adjunct or full-time or new to this or old to this. Hope often will say, I don't know, let's try this way. So she's learning too, but it really helps to have somebody who feels like an ally, who all they want to do is help you do what you want to do, the way you want to do it for the benefit of your students. So I wholeheartedly suggest coming and bugging.
Yeah, Al and I call it job security when you guys come down. Thank you. Let's give Matt a round of applause. Thank you, Matt. Just a reminder, we've got lots of sessions that we're building out for this spring semester. Matt's our first faculty showcase. If you guys have something amazing you want to share, feel free to let us know. And you get, if it's during a lunch and learn, you get to choose what we're having for the day, because Matt, you know, it's like a really done for it.
I'll take credit for that.
Also, be on the lookout. Probably tomorrow, I'm going to be sending out an email about some new things that we're going to be offering this semester in the CTL that we're really excited about, that involves everyone on campus. So, a little plug for that. So, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.